You tell yourself this time will be different. You set a goal, make a plan, feel motivated for a moment. And then, something happens. You procrastinate. You overthink. You avoid the very thing you said you wanted. Or you get close, really close, and then pull back. And afterwards, you're left wondering the same thing. Why do I keep doing this? Because it doesn't feel logical. You want to move forward. You want things to improve. So why do your own actions keep getting in the way? The frustrating part is, it doesn't feel like a choice. It feels automatic, like something takes over in the moment. And that's because, in a way, it does. Self-sabotage isn't about laziness. It's not about a lack of discipline. It's usually about protection. Your brain is trying to keep you safe, just not in the way you'd expect. Because any kind of change, even positive change, can feel like a risk. A new job, putting yourself out there, starting something important. All of those things come with uncertainty, and your brain doesn't love uncertainty. It prefers what's familiar, even if what's familiar isn't actually making you happy. So when you start moving towards something new, something better, something meaningful, your brain quietly steps in. It slows you down, creates doubt, finds reasons to wait. Because from its perspective, staying where you are feels safer than stepping into the unknown. Another part of this is identity. You carry a version of yourself in your mind, an idea of who you are. Maybe it's, I'm not consistent. I'm not confident. I never follow through. And even if you don't say those things out loud, they sit in the background. So when your actions start to move outside of that identity, it creates tension. Because your brain likes things to match. So if you see yourself one way but start acting in another, something feels off. And often you unconsciously pull yourself back. Not because you want to fail, but because it feels more familiar. There's also fear. Not just fear of failure, but fear of what happens if things actually go well. Because success changes things. It brings new expectations, more responsibility, more visibility. And that can feel just as uncomfortable as failing. So sometimes, self-sabotage is a way of staying in a space where you don't have to deal with that, where things are predictable, where the stakes feel lower. There's also the role of habits. Self-sabotage isn't always dramatic. It can be small, repeated behaviours. Putting things off, scrolling instead of starting, telling yourself you'll do it later. Individually, they don't seem like much, but over time they add up, and they create a pattern, a loop that becomes familiar. And the more familiar it becomes, the more automatic it feels, until it starts to feel like that's just who you are. But it's not who you are. It's what you've practiced. And anything that's practiced can be changed. Another layer is perfectionism, waiting for the right moment, the perfect plan, the ideal conditions. Because if everything is perfect, then you can't fail, right? But the reality is, that moment never comes. So you stay in preparation, in thinking, in planning. And that becomes another form of avoidance, a quieter kind of self-sabotage, one that looks productive, but keeps you stuck in the same place. And maybe the most important thing to understand is this. Self-sabotage isn't you working against yourself. It's you trying to protect yourself with outdated patterns. Patterns that might have made sense at some point, but don't serve you anymore. So the shift isn't about being harder on yourself. It's not about forcing discipline or pushing through everything. It starts with awareness, noticing the moment it happens, the hesitation, the excuse, the urge to delay. And instead of immediately following it, just pausing. Because in that pause, you create a small gap, a gap between the pattern and your response. And that's where change begins. Not in big, dramatic moves, but in small interruptions, small decisions that go against the usual pattern. Starting before you feel ready, taking action before you've overthought it, following through even when it feels uncomfortable. Because every time you do that, you send a different signal to yourself. You start to shift that identity. You start to prove that you can move forward. And slowly, that pattern begins to lose its hold. So if you've been feeling stuck in this cycle, it doesn't mean you're broken. It doesn't mean you lack motivation. It means there's a part of you trying to keep things safe. And once you understand that, everything changes. Because you're not fighting yourself anymore. You're working with yourself. And that's where real progress starts.